Hi, beautiful soul. If this message has found you, it might be because you've noticed a pattern showing up in your life where men are just not consistent, emotionally vulnerable, honest, supportive, and healed. And this can be because of the energy we're projecting out through our own father wound. So, this father wound sets the tone for the relationship that we have with men in our lives. And we are subconsciously attracted to people who we can recreate the same dynamics of our childhood with. So if this sounds like something you've been experiencing, you might find this video helpful. So for me, this looked like attracting emotionally unavailable men who weren't putting in any effort or commitment, men that were dominating and controlling, dealing with complete misogynists, being criticized and disrespected by men, finding myself in archaic and patriarchal environments, men not supporting or defending me when required. For example, if their family or friends criticized me or disrespected me, just not standing up for me in those moments. Or in workplaces, if someone crossed the line towards me, just being let down by male colleagues or a male line manager, for example. It also included nice guys who were wanting to be just friends, but secretly hoping for something physical to happen, which was really manipulative. And so this dynamic had bled into every part of my life where I genuinely felt that I couldn't trust men. And this made me hyper independent and hyper masculine within myself. So energetically, because I couldn't rely on any masculines in my life, and therefore I embodied that for myself. So that manifested in not accepting help or support from other people, being a bit of a control freak, and feeling uncomfortable in allowing things to just flow naturally. And being stoic and avoiding vulnerability and avoiding feeling emotions as much as possible. And all this stemmed from my childhood experience. So I grew up with a father that had a lot of issues relating to people. He was controlling, domineering, emotionally dysregulated with anger issues, very critical and emotionally abusive, emotionally detached. He was a drinker and he would lash out and in anger and pick fights and things like that. And so this was a dynamic that was kind of coming into my reality, probably not to that extreme, but definitely the emotional unavailability, the lack of commitment, things like this, just, being manipulative and wanting to be friends, but really secretly wanting more. This dynamic was just constant. And up until my early 30s, I would say. And so I eventually ended up giving up on men altogether. I broadened out my dating to women, and that did lead to a relationship with a woman who also, had the same issues with not trusting men and having had a difficult childhood experience with her father as well. So this pattern was showing up in various ways, and for me it was in every facet of my life. And I came to the realization that this was being highlighted, this had a spotlight on it because it needed healing. It was coming from within me. And healing that within myself meant that I was able to actually heal to the point where I no longer experienced that pattern and that dynamic that I was stuck in for so many years in my life anymore. And so, how did I begin to heal my father wound? So, there were a few methods that I used. So, the first one was just reflecting on and journaling the origins of my wounding. Where did it originate? What age? What was the dynamic that I was experiencing? And how that actually shaped my behaviors and the things that I was, attracted to and willing to accept in my life as an adult. I also reflected on why my father was the way he was. So just gaining an understanding that he had a very turbulent and toxic family dynamic as well. He was just repeating his own ancestral wounding that he had received. And that's not an excuse because, when we're a child, the things that happen to us, they're not our fault, but they are our responsibility to look at and heal so that we're not repeating the same dynamics. Another realization I had was the possibility of undiagnosed ADHD. So being neurodivergent, means that emotional dysregulation can come out of this and is definitely correlated with ADHD in particular. And so part of my own journey was looking into my own behaviors and challenges, and I, experienced the same issues in my younger years, certainly, in my teens and potentially even my early 20s with this emotional dysregulation issue. And I was recently diagnosed with ADHD, and as neurodivergence runs in families, it's totally possible that my father, who did display similar, behaviors that I did, like impulsivity, emotional dysregulation, lashing out in anger and emotions, that might have also been applicable to him. The next one was inner child work, and I did that through visualization. So for that, I found a quiet space, set the tone, put some music on, and went through and visualized my father and I in my mind. And he was receptive and open to hearing anything that I had to say. And in that visualization, I spoke to him, I expressed my feelings and explained the things that he had done that hurt me, and, the behaviors that were an issue as a child. And once I felt that I had identified and spoken about everything in that visualization, like once I had brought everything up in that visualization, I closed that practice off with forgiveness. So I forgave him for his actions and how he hurt me. So forgiveness shouldn't be conflated with condoning something. So forgiving is not condoning poor or abusive behavior. It's just accepting that this is where the person was at in their spiritual journey, with their level of consciousness at the time. And so that means that person just may not have been capable of anything else in that moment, or even in this entire incarnation, which was definitely the case for my father. Another thing I did was just father wound healing meditations, and I found guided meditations really worked for this, which I had found on either YouTube or Spotify, places like this. Another thing I found that I needed to do was working on my self-esteem. So growing up in that environment with a very critical father, my self-esteem and my self-confidence was super low. And that was a reason why I accepted poor behavior from people. So I did this by challenging myself and those negative thoughts about myself by setting goals. So starting with small goals, and then working my way up to bigger and bigger goals. Things that I wasn't 100% sure whether I could achieve them, like they were genuinely a challenge, which once I achieved them, almost proved to myself that I was more capable than I thought. And by doing that over the years, my self-esteem and confidence grew. So once I worked on myself in these ways, I noticed men in my orbit treating me differently with respect and care. Strangers, work colleagues, family members started showing behaviors such as being more attentive, being more caring, supportive, defending me. And those sleazy men were just not as prominent. And if there was one, I was able to recognize this immediately and cut things off with love and kindness for myself. So when we heal the father wound, we set the standard that we expect to be treated. And if enough of us do this, we can both individually and collectively completely liberate ourselves from these unhealthy dynamics in our society that seem to perpetuate themselves in our lives. So I'm hoping this has helped someone. Thank you for watching. I love you.